Well, the Toronto Raptors have a lot of people confused. The Brooklyn Nets have a lot of people confused. The Portland Trailblazers have a lot of people confused. And the New Orleans Pelicans have me confused. Did these teams really mess up? Are these poor draft grades warranted? We're going to take you through the entire first round today with specific focus on the Toronto Raptors, on whether or not these teams, in fact, did mess up. I'll remind you that Frank Ntilikina was heralded as a great pick. Killian Hayes was heralded as a great pick. Scotty Barnes was heralded as a terrible pick. So, or not heralded, he was maligned as a terrible pick. So these draft day reactions are a little bit, they're just that. They tend to be overreactions, usually by people who are going on narratives. And if you watch the panel today, you'll understand where I'm coming from on this. And I'm going to take you through my thoughts on Colin Murray Boyles, the Toronto Raptors #9 pick. I'll give you my thoughts on him that are now lucid and somewhat more coherent after a night of sleeping on it. Thinking back to all the games I've watched with South Carolina, I did so much studying on Colin Murray Boyles, as those of you know who watched our pre-draft show on the big board yesterday. If you watched my previous big board, you know I'm very, very high on Colin Murray Boyles. I think he's a very good player. There are some question marks, and we'll address those. Our film study on Colin Murray Boyles will be coming out this weekend. We will go through and break down a ton of what he does well, how it might translate to the NBA level, why you're probably sleeping on his scoring gravity, why his defensive versatility and overall value is somewhat slept on, especially when it comes to understanding how defense is played today. Can he be a shooter? Will he ever be respected? What kind of gravity does he have? How does he overcompensate for it? All of that will be not only touched on today, but also broken down in film this weekend when I have some time to really just crunch it down. I have some family in town tomorrow, so tomorrow's pretty much marked off to hang with them. But on Saturday, I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it, and I'm gonna give you guys my deep dive on why the Raptors made this controversial pick. So let's start with the charges against. You already have this player type on your roster. Why would you do this? That's one charge. Number two charge, he didn't want to be here. Uh, Evidenced by the fact that they have done nothing but damage control literally all day. The Raptors tweeted out a picture of Colin Murray Boyles smiling yesterday, saying, "See, he's happy." CMB today posted a picture of himself, which is on our thumbnail, of him wearing a Toronto Raptors shirt with the old school Raptors logo. Shout outs to the purple. And Chloe Kitts, his girlfriend, who did not look very thrilled on draft night about him going to Toronto, posted a picture today on her social media. She is a very accomplished basketball player for the South Carolina Gamecocks, and she posted a picture of herself in a Raptors cap. Do you think that maybe his agency let him know that he went viral for his reaction, which was "what the fuck," and his generally stoic, somewhat sullen demeanor after being picked? Look, man, I'll say this. South Carolina to Toronto is a big step. And maybe, Bobby Webster addressed it yesterday as well, that, hey, like maybe we need to start leaking this to the agent so that they can let these players know before, so they can prepare their reaction a little bit. It is certainly very different than Scotty Barnes jumping up and dancing with Jason Simpson. And it's, maybe a little similar to Jacoby Walter, right? The unpredictability of this is that Scotty probably understood very strongly that he was going to go number 4 or number 5, so it wasn't as big a shock. I think Colin Murray Boyles, maybe it was a bit of a shock for him to go 9, because he was certainly pegged to go after 10 for most people. I'll most specifically talk about, Colin Murray Boyles' game in depth in this, and before we break down all the draft boards, which teams messed up and whatever, take you inside the Nets thinking on what they did. Why did Portland reach for Hansen Young? But I do want to say a few things about Colin Murray Boyles that maybe are going to make you feel a little bit better about this pick. Today on the panel, we were talking about how players who are non-shooters, who have a reputation of non-shooters, and shout outs to Mars Talks Sports, because he brought this up and it was a great conversation and got my mind sparking a little bit. Said players who shoot well but have a reputation as non-shooters, guys like Aaron Gordon, guys like Lou Dort, guys who can shoot 40%, 42%, 43%, they're just never guarded. And Colin Murray Boyles is certainly going to be a guy who's going to struggle to be ever guarded at the NBA level as a shooter. So even if he does at some point shoot 36, 37, 38%, the volume needs to up. The dynamicism as a shooter needs to up. It's not just about being able to hit open shots. It's about, do you force a closeout? Because that's how his driving game is really going to be unlocked at the next level. Now, there are multiple ways to unlock your rim gravity, which Murray Boyles has a lot of. Part of it is off of cuts. He is a great player off of cuts, shot 70% on cuts. This past year, uh, I think this is the type of player that almost always succeeds at the NBA level because there are very few red flags. He's a hard worker, got it out of the mud, wasn't a super highly recruited prospect coming out of high school. He's gotten a lot better over the last 2 years. So obviously, if the Raptors been watching him since high school, watching him last year, they were high on him last year. Probably he was a guy that they were looking at had they kept their top 6 pick. I would not be shocked if he would have been their pick had they picked fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever last year. I wouldn't be surprised if CMB was a lock for them last year. So they just ended up getting the same guy this year, but now you get him at number 9, and he would not have fallen to number 9 last year. I'm quite certain of that. So when a guy gets a reputation as a non-shooter and he's on a team that went 12-20 and he's not in the March Madness, can get a little bit underrated, right? We look at the analytics, plus 11 box with minus. That's very encouraging. When you consider the context he was in, it's even more encouraging because players who have not a lot of good players around them, not a lot of space to move with, can't shoot, shouldn't be successful ever. So you start piecing it together and you say, okay, what if we can change the variables a little bit? It's the same thing I do with Scotty Barnes. So bear with me for a second. Change the variables just a little bit, right? He is athletic. He's not vertically athletic, but he is coordinated. He's balanced, right? He's balanced in the way Luka is balanced. He's balanced in the way that Julius Randle is balanced. He takes contact well. So let's add something and take something away. So let's add spacing around him. Let's expand the court out to an NBA court. Let's expand the three-point line out to 23, 24 feet. Let's make the players around him better. Let's just do that one thing. Okay, we're not even talking about him necessarily. We're talking about the context in which he's in. He's better. He's immediately better because he's a super smart player. And the more space you give to smart players, the better they do. The less space you give to dumb players, the better they do. That's why dumb players do really, really well in high school gymnasiums. So when you add the space, now you're talking about the offensive benefit of wider angles to attack as a driver, which will help him tremendously because he was working out of a shoebox without his jump shot hitting. Teams were able to gang up on him a lot at South Carolina. So that's the first thing, is the increased space is going to help him so much. There are other players that increased space is going to help a lot. Carter Bryant, Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper. Basically, these are the guys whose games really do translate to the NBA level. There are certain guys where space is not going to help. Those are the guys who are slow-footed, bigs. Those are the guys that are going to struggle in space. Guys like potentially Derek Queen, New Orleans Pelican now. That guy might struggle in space. Guys who can't necessarily stretch the floor, but also can't beat their man off the dribble are going to struggle in space because now you have to navigate more space to get to where you want to get to. That gets complicated, right? What about, okay, so that in and of itself is a huge variable that you need to think about, right? Is more space favors big playmakers. That's why Cade went number 1. If you think about Colin Murray Boyles in a very different context, I think you have to ask yourself, what if he could shoot? That's the second variable. If he could shoot, let's just say. Now, not a huge sample of pull-up jumpers. Dude is just a winner. He was dragging a very poor team. What if, a little bit like Scotty Barnes, he was sort of working on the jumper behind closed doors? I'm not here to tell you that Colin Murray Boyles is secretly a really good jump shooter. He's not a good jump shooter. There's all sorts of stuff that's wrong with his mechanics. His release is okay, but a little inconsistent. His hands get in the way of each other. He is a lefty, which is great defensively. He is pretty ambidextrous when it comes to his finishes around the rim, also good. But his base on his jump shot is very inconsistent. It does not project to be a really great pull-up jump shooter. They're going to have to work on this. And most importantly, he's going to have to want to work on it. This is where you differentiate between a guy like Colin Murray Boyles, who is very aware of his weaknesses and has a track record of getting better at them and acknowledging them, versus a guy like maybe Ace Bailey, Rocco Zikarsky, who maybe picked today, who maybe don't necessarily smell their own shit very well. So if you add those two variables alone, you're talking about a top 3 pick in this draft very, very easily. Now, projecting this level of shooter who doesn't have a lot of priors at any level, who has struggled historically at the line, to just radically improve his jumper, this is going to come down to the brain. Now, you'll remember that I'm very fascinated with the brain, as evidenced by the fact that I'm a basketball channel. We are a basketball channel that has done 2 separate videos where we were discussing the neuroscience of success and what are the predictors of success. Intelligence is a massive predictor of success when it comes to the NBA level. And I spoke to a scout last year who said Colin Murray Boyle is the smartest player I've ever been around. He is literally a genius. So you look at him, you look at a guy like Maxime Renault, you potentially look at, yeah, I think those are the 2 guys that really, really stick out as super, super smart. Maybe Con Knipple. Yeah, those 3 guys really stick out as super high intelligence, right? And I say this as a person who's been around a lot of really intelligent people. Intelligent people can sometimes be very awkward, in social settings. Sometimes they can be a little bit weird when it comes to things, but they're always processing the emotions. They're always trying to sort of figure things out. They're always trying to compute, what's going on. And I think the thing with CMB is that his aptitude for improvement is tremendous. Could he be a bit of a late bloomer? Could he be a type of person that maybe just is a little bit younger than his age actually suggests in terms of his expansion of his game? The handle will help tremendously. The jump shooting has to come at some point. But if it never comes, he's still going to provide you a tremendous amount of value defensively. Now, I want you to think about the NBA Finals that we just watched. Think about the entire playoffs as in a nutshell, but try to think about some things that really came up in the playoffs. Physicality. Why did Chet Holmgren struggle so much when Jalen Williams didn't struggle as much? Why were Lou Dort and Alex Caruso so successful? Why is Aaron Nesmith so successful? Why are the Indiana Pacers so successful? Some trends that emerged. Number one, it really helps when 5 guys can handle the basketball. I want you to think about the Toronto Raptors right now with the following lineup, and I want you to ask yourself which of these players can't handle the basketball. Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Colin Murray Boyles. Okay. Think about those 5 players now. Ask which one of those players can't run a fast break for you. They can all run a fast break for you. Which one of those players has terrible off-ball tendencies? They actually all have really good off-ball tendencies. RJ can improve significantly as a cutter and a finisher. Which one of these players can't finish inside, right? Even if you add Jakob Pertl and let's just say you remove RJ Barrett from the situation, you move Scotty to the 2, Brandon to the 3, Colin Murray Boyles to the 4, Jakob to the 5. Once again, ask yourself this question: which one of these players is a negative playmaker? There's no negative playmaker here. They're all good playmakers, which means they can rebound well above average for their position. Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, they can all grab it and go. This grab it and go dynamic offense is exactly what made Indiana so freaking unpredictable. Now, what helps Indiana is they had a stretch big. They had multiple stretch bigs. They had 3 stretch bigs: Thomas Bryant, Obi Toppin, Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner. They have 4 big dudes who can actually shoot it. Why does that help? Because it creates wider angles for guards like Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard to actually attack. You consider why Oklahoma City was so successful despite the fact that they sometimes couldn't shoot. And sometimes we're bricking wide open threes and we're shooting 3 for 17 in games they were winning. Why were they so successful? The physicality of a Lou Dort, the physicality of, Jalen Williams, the switchability, the physicality, the multi-positional, the gap help. Well, doesn't CMB feel like the type of guy who could have actually stepped in for Lou Dort and you wouldn't have lost a step because he's just so much better as a ball handler, driver, whatever, and he provides a lot of the same value that Lou Dort does defensively? I think you really cooked up here because he's bigger than Lou Dort and he's bigger than Jalen Williams. So what you got in Colin Murray Boyles is a Kinder egg. And what you crack open, you find that you not only drafted a backup center, you not only drafted an OG replacement, you not only drafted a point forward, you not only drafted a potential starting power forward for you, you not only drafted a guy who can handle the break and, run possessions off you, not only handle someone who can play off of Scotty as a great screener, you not only handle, drafted a great screener, There's a million different ways in which this guy can be successful in the basketball court. And I think that is very important. You drafted a good rebounder, you drafted a good team guy, and you drafted a guy, most importantly, perhaps very importantly, who's actually been a role player before. This is not something that you can say about Ace Bailey. This is not something you can say about Derek Queen. These guys don't have that in their game. So you're betting that they will adopt it. Something that really bothered me on the panel today, I'll take a brief moment to just talk about the bullshit that happened on the panel, not taking swipes at anybody, but something that really kind of perked me up, in my head was this idea that when the Sacramento Kings replaced Harrison Barnes with DeMar DeRozan, why did DeMar DeRozan not do Harrison Barnes stuff? Look, I'm going to say this as somebody who has studied this game for a very long time. There is always a bias that players can scale down seamlessly, and they can't. Harrison Barnes is a really good player because he does things that DeMar DeRozan does not do. DeMar DeRozan, ditto. He does things that Harrison Barnes can't do. Asking Harrison Barnes to be DeMar DeRozan is equally as ridiculous as asking DeMar DeRozan to be Harrison Barnes. This is why I somewhat scoff at the idea that Coach Budenholzer asked Bradley Beal to be more like Jrue Holiday. He wishes he could be more like Jrue Holiday. He dreams that he could be more like Jrue Holiday, except he doesn't, because he doesn't do Jrue Holiday shit. He can't be Jrue Holiday. He'll never be Jrue Holiday because defensive effort is a skill set. Switchability, moving your hips, moving your hands, understanding passing lanes, understanding rebounding, position, boxing out. These are all skills. You can't just say, well, I really, why can't RJ be more like Lou Dort? But fuck that, man. He can't be. He'll never be. That's not his skill set. You can't just assume that because a guy's not scoring, he can just magically turn into Alex Caruso. He's not. Alex Caruso is special. That's why these guys get underrated. Herb Jones is special. Dyson Daniels is special. Trey Murphy is special, particularly because they have specific skill sets. I can't ask Scotty Barnes to be Trey Murphy any more than I can ask Trey Murphy to be Scotty Barnes. These are different types of players. Colin Murray Boyles can do a lot of shit, but harping in our saying like, well, he's not like this guy. He's not as tall as Kaman Malech. He's not as good a shooter as Carter Bryant. And again, don't accuse me of switching up. I would have picked Carter Bryant 20 times out of 20 yesterday, but I'm happy with Colin Murray Boyles, and I'm trying to explain why. What CMB does is the stuff that casual observers miss. They're not good at it. You're not good at seeing it. The type of pressure he puts on the rim, the finishes, the nifty finishes. Yeah, he's a below the rim finisher for the most part, but he's a better athlete than Draymond Green, for sure. He's a better athlete. He's a more skilled scorer than Draymond Green. The ability to handle the basketball on the break from the center position, potentially, he's not going to give up on this. I want to be clear about something. He has the size to bother centers legitimately, and he has like that lower body to actually hold them off the block. We've seen OG Anunoby guard Joel Embiid and do a successful job. We've seen Scotty Barnes shut down Nikola Jokic in the fourth quarter. We've seen that happen. Hold them to 0 points. How are they able to do it? Strength. Emmanuel Quickley cannot be that strong. If Emmanuel Quickley gets stuck onto a perimeter, a big, that's curtains for Emmanuel Quickley. Despite the 6'9" wingspan, that's not going to help him. So what CMB can do is he can be a 100% positive defender at 5 positions. Now, I want you to think about a player. I want you to think about all the players in the league that you would really be confident in saying they can guard 1 through 5. Really think about it. Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, that's 2. Bam Adebayo, potentially, that's 3. Where's your 4th? There aren't a lot of these guys. You'll come up with some for sure. You can say Dyson can guard 1 through 4, but he struggles on 5s. You can certainly say a player like Jalen Williams probably, maxes out on the versatility index. Jalen Williams, J-Dub specifically, is a very special defender. Tamani Kamara, great defender. There just aren't a lot of them, man. And in this draft, legitimately, there were 3. I think there were like 3 defenders that can guard at least 4 positions. CMB and Cooper Flagg are probably the 2 defenders that can guard 5 positions. I say this to say that I don't think Carter can guard centers. I think Carter can guard 1 through 4. I think CMB can legitimately guard 1 through 5. Now, what does that mean? That means that is a cheat code defensively. That has to mean something. That has to mean a lot, because in a league which is consistently relying on pick and roll, this is a guy you cannot pick on. You can't pick on him. And by the way, I'm not saying, oh, in 3-4 years, you won't be able to pick on him. You can't pick on him tomorrow. If we played an NBA game tomorrow, Colin Murray-Boyles is a positive defender. That gets you on the court. The shooting, he's going to have to work on it for sure. So my thoughts on CMB are he is a jump shot away from projecting to all-star. That's how I feel about him. His high-level feel playmaking is what succeeds at the NBA level. Don't look at he doesn't have the greatest vertical pop. He's not jumping out of the gym like Cooper Flagg or Carter Bryant. He doesn't have that type of explosion at the rim. Yeah, but it goes in, right? Luka doesn't have explosion. Jokic doesn't have explosion. It's so funny. Every time I listen to Danny Wolf and Derek Queen being compared to Nikola Jokic, I kept thinking, I'm like, there's actually one player in this draft who has Jokic-isms in him, and that's actually Colin Murray-Boyles. I'm not surprised that Darko loved this guy, and I'm not surprised that I was wrong about their love for Carter Bryant. I want to take you back to something I said a year and a half ago when I started petitioning for OG Anunoby to come back via free agency. I said the Raptors are going to miss OG. The Raptors need OG. OG and Scotty works. The minute OG left, Scotty had to take on this entire defensive load. His percentages plummeted off a cliff, literally went from 39% three-point shooting through 3 months to like 26%. It's never recovered. Everyone focuses on, we gotta find Pascal Siakam. In a lot of ways, did you not just replace Pascal and OG with CMB and Brandon Ingram? Except they're way younger and cheaper. Did you think about that? $75 to $80 million for those two guys, or $50 million for these two guys. And these two guys are younger. Now, of course, as I'm saying, the jump shot will be a huge swing skill. If he can't shoot, it's going to limit everything. He's not going to be a productive high-level starter without the jump shot. But if the jump shot can get respectable, and by respectable, I mean Aaron Gordon throughout his career, he's got to be willing to take them. Is there a coach in this league that I trust more with this guy's jumper than Darko? No. Are there 5 players in this draft that I trust to work hard enough to compensate for this than CMB? No, there aren't. And he's young. He's 21 years old, and I think he's going to get a lot better. I think you guys are going to love him. I really do. Honestly do. I think you guys are going to love him. He's not a rim protector. His defensive impact, which we'll break down, this weekend in the film study, it's really about pressure and force. He makes you make mistakes. He bumps you. He moves his feet. He's very good at anticipating. He has this innate ability to make you the worst version of yourself. He does his work early. He bodies you. He tips the ball away. He's consistently moving his feet and his hands to create deflections. This, to me, every time I watched him play at South Carolina the last 2 years, I'm like, this is a guy who's obsessed with film study. This is a guy who is really scouting, because there's certain things where he's blowing up a play, and that's where I think all the Draymond Green comparisons come. As a post scorer, I made this comparison yesterday on the draft show. Like, he does a lot of Julius Randle, Carmelo Anthony stuff on the block, and that's valuable. The Raptors do need shooting. They do need shooting, and they seem to be obsessed with addressing these two things. I'll point to something kind of ironic. I was saying that I said that they needed to replace OG Anunoby. I feel like they effectively just did. In the 2023 draft, I was hell-bent on the idea that you need movement shooters around Scotty Barnes. I'd seen movement shooters around Scotty Barnes. I liked the idea of putting movement shooters around Scotty Barnes. That's why and this is based on his synergistic fit with small-level movement shooters that I've seen him play with in the past. And it's interesting that I kept honing in on the best movement shooter in this draft is Jordan Hawkins. So that's why we need to get Jordan Hawkins. And what happens? Get Grady Dick, Emmanuel Quickley, Jacoby Walter in a year. In 13 months, you add those 3 players to your team. So the archetype is right. The Raptors have figured out that you need movement shooters around Scotty. You need moving targets for a great gifted passer like this who can score. Okay, cool. That creates the unpredictability. That's how Darko wants to play. That's how Jordy would presumably play. That's how probably Greg Popovich would want to play, or Phil Jackson would want to play if they were coaching. So the movement shooting has been addressed, I think, with those 3 players. You have something. Stationary shooting, Ochai Agbaji, Jamison Battle. Makes sense, right? Okay, multi-positional defenders. You tried a mini version of it last year with Jonathan Mobile. Now you do it with CMB. I think between the two of them, I think you've replaced at least some element of what you lost with OG and Precious. Because in a sense, like, wasn't that prototype number one, Vision 6-9? We want to put these like super long defenders together who can switch 1 through 5. Well, Precious Achua, OG Anunoby, version 2.0, Colin Murray Boyles, Jonathan Mobo. Obviously, these guys shoot worse than those guys, but this is why you have a development staff. You like the idea of Kevin Durant next to Scotty Barnes, right? I kept saying, I'm like, man, you need that isolation scoring. You need that isolation scoring. Durant next to Scotty would be great. This is what I was railing about like 3 years ago, 4 years ago when we had that option to trade for him. And I was like, man, you don't know. Like Scotty plus KD works. It's a great basketball fit from a perspective of how basketball is played. And what do? They go out and they get Brandon Ingram. Now, I don't say Brandon Ingram is Kevin Durant because that's very, very impolite to say is not that. But once you address the idea that RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Scotty Barnes are not great isolation scorers, you just back to back knocked out 2 good isolation scorers in Colin Murray Boyles and Brandon Ingram. So now you're really cooking with gas here. You're mixing all the pieces. You have versatile wing defenders. You have positive playmakers across the board. You have a series of movement shooters. You have 2 very good stationary shooters in Ochai and Jamison Battle. You have good switchable long athletes, which is something you've addressed with Jacoby, Jonathan Mobo. You have a rim running big who may pop for you in Over Chomsky. If you remember last year, super high on Eve Nisi. Why? Scotty needs a lob threat. Scotty needs a lob threat. This will be great. Well, what'd you do? You found him at 57. So I feel like I've been kind of in the right neighborhood, but knocking on the wrong door for like 2.5 years for how the Raptors want to build this out. But I certainly see the vision. Okay, so I like CMB. I'm not going to give them an A+, but because they didn't pick my favorite player, but they're going to get a high grade. Let's start with Cooper Flag. Obvious A+ fit. Okay, this is an A+ fit. The Ringer got it right here. Dylan Harper, A. I'm gonna give it an A+. You picked the best player on the board. There was literally nothing else that you should have done or could have done here. The only other player that I would have debated with this, honestly, and this may sound crazy, is the guy they got at number 14. So I really don't care. VJ Edgecombe, A-. Honestly, here's the thing. VJ, this is the first place where I'll give a B because I'm not entirely sure that he's going to be the best player. And I think that one of Con Knipple, Jeremiah Fears, obviously fit perspective, Jeremiah Fears, Jared McCain, and Tyrese Maxey, they were not going to do that. But if so, then just trade down and get extra value. VJ is a hyper productive player. I think he's going to be a really good one. But if we're weighing out the odds, is it VJ versus Con, Trey, and VJ versus the field? I'd take the field any day of the week. Like I think someone picked directly after him is going to be better than him. But if he stays healthy, he's a really, really hardworking kid. I see the vision. I see the upside. I don't think he's a star. And I think there's a chance that 1 or 2 guys taken after him might actually be stars. So if they don't become stars, then great. So I'll give that a B. Con Knipple at 4. I hate this fit for Con Knipple. I love this fit for the, they picked Con Knipple and Liam McNeely. That's interesting. Both guys who super care about winning, might be a good counterbalance and maybe even a sign that the Hornets might want to move off of LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges and the culture that they've had going there. They've had a very unserious culture. I want to say, like, I really don't like this team. I think if I had to pick 3 teams that don't know what the fuck they're doing, this is one of those teams that don't know what the hell they're doing. The Pelicans are the other one. And yeah, it's difficult to say if I hate this for him. I'm just gonna be honest. I hate this for him. I would have loved him in Philly. That would have been great for him. I would have liked him in Utah. I probably would have liked him. I guess I would have liked him in Washington. Yeah, I would have liked him in a lot of places, but they get, let's say, an A- for this. I hope it works out for him. He's a really good player. Ace Bailey to the Utah Jazz. Has any team drafted more prospects that I'm just not high on? Keontae George, Ace Bailey, Isaiah Collier. I had the same issue with all 3 of them. They don't know when to pass. They don't know when to shoot. And they drafted all of them. Good luck, Will Hardy. I give this one a B. Okay. Trey Johnson, I'll give this one an A+. Today when Mars started talking about shooting gravity, players you have to respect, why you respect them, high volume, deep range. difficult variations of shot patterns in terms of three-point shooters, Trey Johnson is the best at that in this draft. He has a legit chance to be your Klay Thompson, Ray Allen archetype. Is he going to be a good defender? Doesn't matter. You have the greatest defensive unit around him. Keyshawn George, awesome defender. I love what the Washington Wizards are doing. They did not outthink themselves here. They should get an A+ for this. Jeremiah Fears to the New Orleans Pelicans. I think a B- is fair here. I see the upside. I see the talent. I think I would have liked this move a lot more if they tanked next year, but they just traded their unprotected 2026 pick and for Derek Queen. And I got to tell you, that is a move that is going to age like milk. They're not a playoff team. I don't know how they think they're going to be a playoff team. They are worse than they were last year. If they're locked in, they're locked in. But Joe Dumars might be the first general manager to get fired in like 3-4 weeks on the job. Like he's just done an abysmal job. And you just got Jordan Poole. Like, come on, man. CJ McCollum is a better player than Jordan Poole if you're trying to win basketball games. But hey, you've got a lot of, I want to say a lot of head cases in the locker room. And I want to be kind when I'm addressing any one of these players as head cases because I don't know them personally. But there's a lot of character red flags in that locker room, okay? And it starts with Zion. And I just feel like if your best player is like that, maybe you can't win. But if Zion really has a healthy year, maybe they could be a surprising play-in team. Nothing that they're going to be next year warranted trading a first-round pick. I would be surprised as hell if they finish above 500. Yegor Demon at 8. I see the vision. Now, Brian Windhorst really, broke the internet saying like, oh, all the league executives are making fun of the Brooklyn Nets. Look, what I've picked Yegor Devin here. No, I would not have picked Yegor Devin, but I get it. Big playmakers are a very valuable archetype. And guess what they did? They drafted 4 big playmakers in this draft. And then they drafted a very underrated freshman out of North Carolina with their 22nd pick. So I certainly see the idea here. I'm sort of surprised that they didn't go with Noah Penda in one of these picks because they seem to be leaning very international with their players. And I'm sort of shocked that they didn't pick Noah Penda. I like him a little bit more, but maybe Noah Penda will be the next, second round steal. By the way, to those of you who are interested, Ersin and I will be doing a draft live show at 7 o'clock. I think Ersin will join around 7:15. And we will have you covered for the second round, including analysis and best players available and all that stuff. So we're going to have you locked in. Hopefully someone really good falls to 39 for the Raptors. Adu Thero's on the board. Rasheer Fleming's on the board. I'm excited. I'm praying one of those guys falls. But I'm kind of prepared for John Tanji. I don't know why. That just feels like John Tanji, Jameer Watkins feels like that's where they're going to go here, right? Colin Murray Boyles, B-. I think this deserves a TBD to some extent. It really depends on how high you are. If he doesn't shoot it, I'll give this a B. If he does shoot it, I'll give this an A. It's not going to be an A+ because it's not Carter Bryant, but it'll be an A. According to The Ringer, it says, we know the Raptors have a type when it comes to wing size players, but at some point you do need to prioritize playmaking and creation. At number 9, they either didn't care and stuck to the type or didn't see a creation talent substantial enough to warrant overriding that approach. Murray Boyles is arguably the most talented defensive processor in the draft. Flag is the other contender, but he doesn't seem like a tough, he seems like a tough fit on a roster with spatial challenges. Having said that, I love Murray Boyles' game, and at the end of the day, he's the type of savvy player worth betting on to figure it all out. And I think that's kind of the point, right? Figuring it out, right? Basketball is a game, figuring it out, figuring out how to play off of different lineups, different players, fitting in. Basketball is a game of chess, and this is the best chess player in the draft. You just drafted the best chess player in this draft. I would bet it would be him or Maxime Renault. Like, those are the guys. Those are the guys that strike me as like, you would do an IQ test and they would be freaking geniuses. Like, this is a guy who can really, really process shit. And if you've seen anything, Luka, Draymond, what do they have in common? Scotty. Like, you look at the concerns, right? They all have concerns. Athletically, jump shot, this, that. Draymond can't shoot. Draymond's below the rim athlete, but he's just smart. He figures it out. You should bet on intelligent people figuring shit out. Intelligent people are remarkably good at doing that. So I like the pick for the Raptors. Number 10, Kaman Malawach, a deal. This is an obvious pick here, so they should get an A. I don't know why they got a B+ here. They should get an A. They picked. It was between him, Carter Bryant, Noah Senge. There was no wrong answer, honestly, between those three. And obviously, I would have preferred they go with Carter, but they have a lot of wings. They needed a big. Matt Ishbia is about winning right away. Ironically, to pick an 18-year-old who becomes the third center, so they now have the entire Hornets center rotation. What does that say about the Hornets? That says they're probably going after Nas Reed and Miles Turner in free agency. But to me, this is an A. Like, I think Kaman's going to be really good. If he really develops offensively the way I think he's going to develop, I think Raptor fans might short term be looking at this like, oh, we really messed up here. And wouldn't it be hella funny if the guy who always drafts African prospects missed on one of the best African prospects ever in Kaman Malawach? But I think the defensive stuff is maybe a little bit overstated. I think I listened to John D today say he's going to be a future defensive player of the year. I don't even think he's a top 3 defender in this draft right now. Now, will he become that? He certainly has the tools to do it. 7'2", 7'7" wingspan. I mean, if anyone's going to morph radically into a Hall of Fame type of defender, it might just be this guy. I suspect he'll be a very, very good NBA player for a very long time if he stays healthy. Cedric Howard at 11. This one goes to the Memphis Grizzlies, and I'm gonna say this is a good fit for them. Now, picking him at 11 versus picking him at 16, probably because they didn't think that they would get him, because they might have felt that the Spurs would go with him. I don't think the Spurs would have picked him over Carter. They might have felt that the OKC Thunder would go with him. I do feel like that would be something. So sometimes you just have to jump the right team. They jump the right team. They get their guy. He is a very, very, very Grizzlies type of player. And I think if you're looking at the Grizzlies track record with these wings, they do a very good job. Jalen Wells, Gigi Jackson, they're really good at this. And they've identified the exact same DNA in this guy. He's going to be a good one for them. Number 12, Noah Senge. So to give the Grizzlies a deal, let's call it a B. I don't see a star in Cedric Howard. I know his jump shot kind of looks like Kawhi Leonard, but I don't think he's going to be a star, superstar, or anything like that. I think you got a very, very productive starter, which is good value at 11, but maybe not the greatest. Number 12, the Chicago Bulls bet on major upside with Noah Senge, which follows a draft in which they drafted Matas Buzelis. These are 2 players that really work with the style of basketball that they're trying to go for. So they have a type, 2-way, versatile transition bigs, big wings, who have some playmaking chops and upside, maybe some shooting potential down the line. Obviously, Noah has shot it better than Colin Murray-Boyce so far, right? But he's not a good shooter. So they have to work with him on that. They did just kind of go through the Patrick Williams experience. So maybe their fan base is a little bit sad about this. Like, oh my God, we just drafted another guy who doesn't score very well. Noah's a tough kid. I wouldn't be shocked if he busts at all. Like, I was not super high on him. I was higher on, Carter. I was higher on CMB than I was on him. I was somewhat perturbed in that, that video that I made where like, are the Raptors about to make a mistake? Well, I mean, I think the Raptors made a mistake, but they didn't make a bad mistake. They didn't make the type of mistake I was expecting them to make. And the type of mistake I was expecting them to make was Noah Senge or Kasparas Yakuchonis. And I'm kind of glad the Raptors dodged that. But if he works out, this is like Pascal Siakam, Tayshaun Prince adjacent. But the if he works out is years away, right? What's going on here? Stop beefing everyone, you grown man. Stop arguing every day. We sick of a pen. Take the Puma hat off. So you're just going to come in here and try to bully me on my own podcast? Wicked talk. I will refer you to my favorite reaction of all time, which is Kawhi Leonard asking Doug Smith, I don't even know where you're sitting at. And he just laughed at him. That's how I feel about you. I don't know the first thing about you. Don't tell me to take my hat off. Don't talk to me. Penn gonna get slapped. Wait till Penn gets slapped. You're an idiot. And you get banned for being intellectually challenged. Let's say. Okay, moving on. Number 13, Maryland freshman goes to the Pelicans. The Hawks cooked up here. The Hawks are the winners of the draft. If it's not the Hawks, it is obviously the Spurs. I think the Spurs get like an A++ grade for number 2 and number 14, but I think the Hawks get a huge plus grade for basically getting a lottery pick in next year's draft for Derek Queen. I mean, shit, bro. Next year's draft is loaded. 1 through 7 is absolutely sick. And I think if you're betting the Pelicans trading their 2026 pick is like, okay, we can't tank now. And it's like, you are one of the most historically cursed franchises in terms of injury history and injury luck. And you didn't exactly do a lot to get better. You traded away a really good player in CJ McCollum who helps you win for a player in Jordan Poole who just doesn't, I don't think, help you win. So they better hope that they didn't just trade away AJ DeBonsa for Derek Queen. But in order to do this, they must have loved him. He is a very talented player. If he works out, is great. But I give this an F, not because of Derek Queen, but because they traded away so much to get him. All right, moving on. Carter Bryant, A plus. Nothing said. He was the best player on the board by far. I think he's going to be great for them. I do want to say the low usage stuff is a little bit scary. If you're trying to take him a little bit higher, that would be gamble. You know, if Brooklyn wanted to take him at 8, if Pelicans wanted to take him at 7, if the Raptors wanted to take him at 9, you really, really had to be sure that he was willing to be a higher utility guy and a higher usage guy. And unfortunately, there just wasn't an opportunity to show that at Atlanta. In Arizona. I'm convinced that if Carter Bryant goes back to Arizona, he's a top 10 pick next year, maybe as high as top 6. So I'm going to be very curious, and I will take this opportunity to let y'all know something. This is something I talked to with my girlfriend about this morning as I was ruminating over, just feeling sick to death over the fact that Carter went to the Spurs. And she said, there's nothing you can do. Maybe you need to, work harder at your career so that one day you could be hired by an NBA front office. They'll take you more seriously or whatever. And I was just like, you know what? Let me do the content game thing. And I'm going to work on this. This is not a promise, but this is an idea that I had this morning that I have stuck to till 5 p.m. So I've had this dream. This is my greatest dream, is I want to start a second channel to cover the Spurs. I don't want to do it on Pensare Basketball because I feel like the algorithm messes it up and y'all are mainly Raptor fans, but I feel 98% certain that I want to do that, right? Stop being condescending to people. Make me banned. Okay, so that's sort of my point. I wanna start a Spurs channel largely because I love covering good basketball, and I wonder if I could do a little bit of OKC stuff there. And I think the side benefit of doing that would be that next year when the draft rolls around, provided that Spurs channel also blows up and does well, it would be great because I can simultaneously broadcast the draft show to 2 channels. I think that would be great. Penn Spurs basketball. No, I think it would be a deviation to some extent from my typical Pensare thing. Maybe it would be something like Wemby's World. I'm just kidding. Wayne's World, Wemby's World. No, I think it will be the Big Fundamental. Can we call it the Big Fundamental podcast? Right. So that would be cool, and that way I can cover one of my favorite teams in the league, and sort of get my fix of covering 3 of my favorite prospects in decades in Carter, Wemby, and Stephon Castle. I think that would be great. Why you make a burner on Twitter talking crazy on Mars? I don't have burners. Never had a burner ever. So yeah, I confidently say what I have to say because I'm a man. And you come into this, right? Arham, Glaze Fest podcast. You know what? Take your own advice. You create the Glaze Fest podcast. Jeez. Moving up fast. You know what? How about this? Can y'all do something? Can y'all give me some suggestions in the comments after? If you watch this, give me a suggestion for what a great Spurs podcast would be called. Because I'm on it, man. I'm on it. Wemby got a huge fan base. I am very I can't fake passion. I really can't. I genuinely cannot fake passion. If I don't have energy for something, you're gonna see me be dead ass, like just very monotonous. So when I'm really passionate about something, I typically in life do it. When I was really passionate about becoming a filmmaker, I became a filmmaker and I went and made 13 films. When I became passionate about being a cinematographer, because I was sick and tired of directing cinematographers, I picked up a camera and I learned how to do it. I just like, I don't know, I'm like a child. I just do what I want. I do what I want. I do what I want. And I'm not at the detriment of other people necessarily, but I chase what I'm passionate about right now. I'm very passionate about covering the Spurs. So up next podcast, okay, in the Spurs of the moment. That's a little wordy, but I like where you're going with this. Pen, I'm 16 and I want to start something similar to you. Any tips, man? Be honest. Be honest. Don't lie to people. Be honest. Don't play characters. If you haven't watched the prospect, if you haven't watched the game, just say you haven't watched it. I openly admitted I've only watched 8 Chicago Sky games, and people were like ruthless about it. I'm sorry. I have a lot of shit that I'm doing in my life. I don't have time to watch every Chicago Sky game. And I certainly don't have the low self esteem to go on a panel and lie that I've watched every Angel Reese game. I haven't. I haven't. Just be honest. Be honest. You find an audience. You'll find an audience, even if you're a condescending dick who is monotonous, who wears the same hat every single day. You will find an audience because there's an audience for truth. I believe that there's an audience for truth. And the second thing I will tell you is do the work. Do the work, my guy. This is something that I learned by being a huge Kevin Garnett fan growing up and Tim Duncan fan, is that the work doesn't lie. And what I will tell you is that Kevin Garnett had this quote. He said, you know, every single time you go to sleep, just know that somebody on the other side of the world is waking up and doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, something to that effect. And that just got me thinking, if you want to be better than, if you want to be better than the competition, and I'm not trying to create a zero sum dichotomy here, but I'm saying, like, if you want to be better, you got to read better books. You got to do more research. If I want to know more about Colin Murray Boyles or Carter Bryant than my fellow draft analysts, well, I have to break down the tape. I can't just magically assume that I'm going to yap on the internet and everyone, and I'm just going to know automatically. No, that's just bullshit. And I'll tell you something, you know, that just kind of bothered me today. It's bothered me actually yesterday as well. And I'm not going to directly call it the person that it just kind of triggered something, but listening to people regurgitate points from publicly available articles as if they are their own thoughts is possibly the most annoying thing for me. It's like a siren to my brain, like, shut up, shut up, shut up, you know? Because it's like, why are you pretending to know this? Like, you just read it, just cite the article, just say, this is what, you know, J. Kyle Mann thinks. Don't adopt it as your own. Like, that's kind of my view on it. I think you should be an independent thinker. I love that people didn't just jump on, you know, that I'm right about Carter or wrong about Carter. Just go do your own shit. My goal is not to replace your ability to think for yourself. My goal is to hopefully highlight certain things that provoke ideas in your mind that make you go, I got to go research this. That'd be great. That's how you build great communities. That's why I love our community. Our community is really smart. I believe that the people we have that call in, typically when you look at normal call-in shows, I think our call-ins are better than the average. Why? Because these people hopefully are learning. We've had so many people that have messaged me. I started a channel, you know, because of this podcast, because you said I could do it. And I'll tell you this, military man, you can do it. You'll probably be better than 80% of people on day one. Okay, moving on. Thomas Sorber, baby. I like Thomas Sorber. I've brought this up 100 times. He is heavy as hell. They're going to have to work on his body, tone him down a little bit. 265 pounds is nuts. But he's a big, sturdy dude. And he is going to be able to do a lot of studying under Isaiah Hartenstein. Their development program is awesome. I love his fit long-term next to Chet. If this works out for them, if he's healthy, a lot of ifs, you know, given his injury history this past year. If this works out and they checked his medicals, I'm assuming that they greenlit him. He's going to be a really good player for them. This is a very unassuming type of player, you know, like a little bit like Colin Murray Boyles, or he wasn't the most hype prospect. He wasn't a top 5 recruit. It's not like Derek Queen, where he's, you know, scoring 25 points or whatever in the McDonald's All-American game. There's no flashy highlights. He's just solidly awesome. You know what I mean? And I think that's somewhat like, that should be like the slogan for the Oklahoma City Thunder. We're solidly, quietly, unassumingly awesome. That's Shea. That's Thomas Sorber. That's Lou Dort. That's Alex Caruso. Just maybe we're more impactful than you think we should be. You know, something like that. J-Dub was like this too. I think they have identified a really good person that really fits in their culture. I'll give them a solid A. I can give them a solid A. Hanson Yang. This is tough, man, because I wasn't high on him at all. But I do trust the Portland Trail Blazers that they did their homework. They did find Tumani Kamara. And if they took him this high, it's probably because they believed that he had a suitor in the 20s or in the late teens that was going to take him. Every year, there's this guy that everyone's secretly higher on than the mocks. Pascal Siakam, 27. Bruno Caboclo, 20. I mean, everyone clowns the Raptors for not waiting until 35 to pick Bruno Caboclo, but they were solidly positive that the Phoenix Suns were going to take Bruno because they had intel from Leandro Barbosa. So If you get your guy, you get your guy. You know, you're going to pay him a little bit more. You instantly get maybe, you know, a country of 1.5 billion people on your side for this. It's good for marketing. Maybe this will open the door. I mean, certainly, if you're talking about wild swings in this draft, this isn't the worst one, right? This is a guy who was very productive, was a defensive player of the year in his league. Granted, not the greatest league. He was one of the biggest players in his league as well. He has a 7'3" wingspan, good feel, good touch, showed some decent mobility. I don't like the way he moves. I'm gonna be honest. I'll echo that point that Ciro made when we were talking about him during the mock draft. I don't like his movement patterns. He doesn't have necessarily the smoothest movement patterns, but he's 7'2". What the fuck do you expect? You know? So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. But I'll give it a C. Not because I don't trust them, but because I somewhat trust myself. And I'll be honest, I only watched 2 games of his and then I watched him in the scrimmages. How much can you really tell from that? I can't tell that much from it. So again, this isn't a guy like Yao Ming where everyone was talking about him for years. He kind of blew up out of nowhere for the last year, and he's quietly been talked about as potentially a guy for the 2026 draft as a late first rounder. And so coming into this draft, obviously, if he came into this draft, he did not get a green room invite. So they kept this hush hush. They think they have unearthed a potential first round steal in Hansen Yang. They did really well with Donovan Clingan last year. They did really well with Tamani Kamara 2 years ago. Is this another success story for them? We'll see. We'll see. They're not impervious. They're definitely prone to making mistakes. I mean, I don't know. The jury's still out on Scoot Henderson, but they got a lot of, let's say they got a lot of, okay, just PC trolls here. Y'all getting banned. So tread carefully. I'm not kidding. We don't even like just boom, 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 boom. We'll ban all of you. Okay. Keep going. And by the way, I don't unban either. So you get banned, you stay banned until I die. Okay. So or until I start the Spurs channel, and then you can try to troll me over there, and then I ban you over there too. Okay. So Joan Berenger, number 17. I mean, there was some lottery buzz for him. I do like his fit. I do like the fact that he's going to have Rudy Gobert there. Another 18-year-old, right? One of, I think, 5 18-year-olds already taken in this draft. Hold on one sec. Yeah. So I think, you know, the athletic potential is there for sure. Don't expect him to play right away. They've taken quite a few swings on athleticism. Leonard Miller, Joan Berenger, right? I think they've been doing decently in the draft, but it's mixed results, right? I like the Terrence Shannon pick last year. Off court controversy aside, I think he really proved something in the playoffs by coming in and being effective right away. I was a little low on their Rob Dillingham pick last year. That could work with a guy like this on the second unit. If you're thinking about building with Anthony Edwards in life post Rudy Gobert, because they were trying to shop Rudy Gobert for Kevin Durant, reportedly, uh, this might be a good bet to be a ping pong center with Naz Reid. It could make some sense for sure. I'm gonna star some serious comments here. What the hell? Okay, moving on. Walter Clayton. This is a little bit higher than I thought he would go. Very interesting. I would have locked him to Miami. I was sure as hell that he was going to Miami. For him to go to the Utah Jazz, it's an interesting counterbalance to the point guards and the guards they already have on that roster. I do like him. I do like him a lot. I didn't think he would go top 20. I do think that they may look back on this draft and say Nolan Traore might have been the better long-term play. Kasparis Yakuchonis might have been the long-term play. But it's hard to bet against a guy who is a national champion, B, has that sort of stoic demeanor where I've never seen him get rattled. Like every game you saw him, they were down 5, down 6, down 7. He was the calmest dude in the entire arena. And I think that that bodes well to having a successful career because he's not going to be emotionally reactive. Young Lightskin saying Kaspar's falling to 20 was almost as much of a shocker as Hansen Yang at 16. I mean, on our mock draft, when we did our community mock, if I'm not mistaken, Kasparis went 18th. So I mean, I think this was always a possibility that one of him, Demon, or Traore was going to fall. Now it's interesting because number 19, we got Nolan Traore to the Nets. Now, a lot of people are really cooking this one. They're like, oh my God, you picked four of the same player. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Guys who can dribble, pass, shoot are very valuable. Yeah, they can't all shoot, but I think Nolan Traore has had shooting priors where he's had successful runs as a shooter at the youth level. Prior to this past year, he was considered a top 5 pick in this draft, lock top 5 pick. He was on every 2025 graphic. And that's when people thought this draft was going to be incredible. He was drawing comparisons to Tony Parker, which might be a little bit lazy French to French comparison, but honestly, like if you watched him play, there's a lot there. He is super fast. He's a great processor of the court. He's a really good, let's say his basketball IQ is very high. They picked 3 of the best passers in this draft. They might have picked 4 of the 6 best passers in this draft, and they put them all on the same team. Some people think that's a problem. Why is that a problem? Since when is passing a problem? Geez. I'm actually a little bit surprised they didn't go with Kasparas Yakuchonis here, but nevertheless, I'm pretty sure if Kasparas had fallen down to their next pick, they would have picked him there. But you take, I think, maybe the higher upside player in Nolan Traore. And I know that that's a very unconventional take because Nolan Traore was pegged to some people as a second round pick. Kasparas was pegged as a top 5 pick. I'm telling you, from pick 5 to pick 26 in this draft, there's a lot of fluidity. There was early talk about Will Riley being a lottery pick. There were some people who had Danny Wolf, Ace Newell as a lottery pick. They're still on the board right now. So this was a relatively flat draft from about 4-3, around 3 till about 20-ish. And there was probably a tier break somewhere in there around 14, 15, but it's not a huge break, right? We're not talking about you're moving from, oh, potential all-stars to potential bums. No, it's like starters versus high-level starters versus low-level starters. It's like it's not a huge gap in the talent here, which means that teams like the Nets actually found a lot of value in this draft, and I really don't hate this draft for them as much as everyone else. Nolan Traore, let's say a grade. I'll give it a solid B minus, B plus. I think there might have been 2 players on the board who would have fit better for them, but certainly not mad at getting Nolan Traore at 19. Kasparas Yakuchonis, I called this when we were doing the live draft that this was the obvious pick for them. I'm glad that his slide stopped here. I was nervous that the Raptors were going to pick him at 9. And I was very happy when that didn't happen, but I was somewhat surprised to see him slide past 15, 16, 17. Feels like the type of player that could come back and haunt you. But honestly, drawn a little bit comparisons to Goran Dragic, struggled a lot down the stretch of the season. Not a great defender, not the greatest athlete, but a functionally good athlete. I think it'll be very important for him to develop more as a shooter. He's not a bad shooter, but it'll be important for him to develop that pull-up game, finish, and learn how to guard at the NBA level. He wasn't the greatest defender at all times, and he wasn't always very committed. Will Riley, I don't have a lot of positive thoughts about Will Riley to the Washington Wizards other than this kind of fits their mold, right? This fits the type of player that they like, and he's a great cutter. He is very physically underdeveloped at this point. He is 19 and a half years old, so it's not like you're drafting an 18-year-old. But man, like he has a lot of time to go in the weight room, and he is going to have to work on that. But this is, there's something to him for sure. Like he, read this draft grade here from them. This was arranged for Riley, one of the youngest players in the class and one with a lot of upside. Adding rangy, switchable players like Rasheer Fleming or Drake Powell was also an option here. But pairing Riley potential as a self-creator with Trey Johnson's shooting gravity gives Washington even more perimeter depth on top of players like Bob Carrington, Keyshawn George, and Corey Kispert. Riley will need time to develop, but he also likely would have gone several spots higher if he stayed in school another year and improved his shooting numbers. Yeah, so I mean, like, look, I think this is the type of long-term play that if he develops the size, it just makes sense. It makes sense. Okay, Drake Powell, not in the greatest situation in North Carolina this year, in my opinion. Didn't play a ton of minutes. Very Carter Bryant-esque situation, but a really good athlete and functionally one of the better defenders in this draft class. A sort of break for the Nets, if you will, from their plus-size playmaker mold of a plus-size finisher. Could he pop for them? I don't know. They've taken a couple of swings like this in the past. Trent Watford, Dariq Whitehead, right? Like they, it's interesting. I certainly see if this works out, this is the ultimate gamble, right? This is a guy who probably, if he's in a different context, would be talked about as a top 15 pick. But because he was in the context he was in, you might have found a steal here. I would have picked someone else. I don't think I would have picked Drake Powell here. So I'm going to give this a C plus. This is the only pick where I'm like, I don't know about the Nets thinking here because I think there were players that I would have picked higher than him. Noah Penda here would have made a little bit more sense to me. Asa Newell would have been an okay pick here for me as well. I could certainly see the argument for Jace Richardson as well. They don't really have that on their roster. Asa Newell, 23 to the Atlanta Hawks, perfectly fits what they want to do. I'll agree with the ringer here. B minus, really rangy, quick, fits their DNA with Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels. They'll be able to turn two-way into one-way. I think he has a little bit of Obi Toppin in his game. You know, uh, I think earlier comparisons to Chris Bosh are completely nuts. Comparisons to Joakim Noah, I don't think he's that level of defender that Joakim was. I watched Joakim and now Horford, with the Florida Gators. But my God, like that is a completely different situation. No, this might work out, and if the shooting comes around, even more so. Nick Clifford to the to the Sacramento Kings. Now, what is it with the Sacramento Kings and drafting guys who are over 23 years old? Like, what is it about this team? Keegan Murray, Davion Mitchell, Nick Clifford, Devin Carter. Like, why does this team just love guys who are older? I have theories about that. I tried to get one of those theories off on the panel today, which is I think this team is just very much failing the marshmallow experiment all the time. Now, this is not an indictment on Neek. I think Neek is a top 20 player in this draft. I think I had him around this range on my draft board. In fact, I kind of want to check that right now and see where Neek Clifford was on my draft board. Neek was 18th. So getting him at 24 is not bad at all. Like, that's not something that should be clowned at all. He's a good player. He's a good playmaker. He's multi-positional. He's played a different style of basketball, like in terms of different role variations throughout the years. This past year at Colorado State, he was more like the man. He was more a creator. So he's been able to hone his game and perfect his game, work on his game a lot. So what the Kings are getting is a guy who's sort of ready to contribute out of the box, right? Is this a little bit of a Chris Duarte situation? Something like that. It could be something along those lines. Obviously, the swing skill for him is, will he be able to shoot it well enough? He has some good shooting priors for sure. He is definitely one of the top 10 players right now in this draft. Will he be one of the top 10 players 5 years from now? It doesn't seem like the Kings care too much. I personally give this draft grade a. Did they pick the highest guy on my board? They did. No, they didn't. They left one guy off. I can give this a B plus, but for some reason, I think they should have gone with Rasheer Fleming. I think they should have gone with Rasheer, but if Rasheer ends up being a bust, I'll end up being wrong. But I think I would have gone with Rasheer if I were them here. Okay, moving on to 26 and 27, Ben Seraph and Danny Wolf. I will give them a solid A minus for both these picks. Now, Ben versus Adu Thero would be my debate here. I would prefer Adu, right? But clearly they already got Drake Powell. So do they need Adu Thero? Did they want Adu Thero? If Ben Seraph can become a little less one-hand dominant, if the jumper comes along, this is one of the better playmakers in this draft class. He is really good. He's not Manu Ginobili, but he's a good athlete, tenacious defender. Danny Wolf, similar thing. He's not going to be playing this super high usage post hub role. Great. My girlfriend just turned on the shower and did not realize that I was recording a podcast. I apologize if there's background noise. Okay. So I hope y'all can hear that. Can y'all hear that? No? Okay. So overall, give me one sec here. Yeah. So overall, Danny Wolf, I don't think his usage or role is going to be anything similar. He looked really devastated at the draft before he got picked. So obviously he was expecting to go much higher. I don't know why he was expecting to go higher. Did he have a promise that got broken? but this was kind of the range for Danny Wolf. I'm like not super surprised that he went this late. If I'm looking at where I had him on my board, I had him. Where the fuck did I have him? I had him 24th. I had Ben Seraph 32nd. So to me, this is like B minus ish. I understand what they're doing. I totally get it. That's kind of where I'm at with this. I think he's a better defender than people give him credit for. I think his movement patterns are spooky unique for a 7-footer out there. I think his jump shot is good. Some people compared him to Dirk Nowitzki. The self generation, that would be crazy, crazy. The 99.9. I think that's an impossible outcome for him, Dirk Nowitzki. But, a stretch big who can put the ball on the court and actually manipulate a defense, grab it and go. He's a really good rebounder. There's really nothing to not like about Danny Wolf this late in the draft. Hugo Gonzalez. I mean, youth prospect that was once ranked as a higher upside player than Cooper Flagg in this class. And it hasn't really materialized, right? Now, do the Boston Celtics believe that they can perhaps give him some reps in a year where they're not expecting to be very competitive, given the fact that they have traded away so many useful players? And yeah, maybe. And if they end up going 28 with him and then 32 with Brashear or 32 with Cockbrenner or Maxime Renault, like this will be the ultimate fleece for Brad Stevens. They've done a very, very good job. I really like this pick. I think I like him more as a player than Ben Zaref. So to me, this is an A for them. 29, Liam McNeely. Honestly, there are players I prefer more than him on the board. I understand that that's weird because, especially if you're a fan of his from Montverde, you can't imagine a world in which he's not a lottery pick. But I watched him last year, and I understand the context that UConn was not great. But man, there are better players available on the board. Now, he's a really good shooter. Don't let those percentages fool you. The jump shot is very pure. He was very often guarded. And speaking to the conversation that Mars was having on the panel, he will be guarded. That is valuable. What else does he do? That's also important. Not a good defender, not a great athlete, but a plus side shooter like this who is legit almost 6'9", 6'8"-ish and can shoot. This is valuable. This is a valuable 9th to 10th guy on your bench. Most good teams need a guy like this who can come off the bench. Think of guys like George Niang, etc., who can just sort of come off the bench. And I'm wondering who they compared him to. Corey Kespert. That's ironic. Caleb Houston, Sam Hauser. I don't see the all-around game of a Sam Hauser. I certainly see more of a knockdown shooter. And Yannick Conan, Niederhauser. This is interesting, right? Like it's difficult to gauge his potential. He's 22 years old, and I think he's somewhat raw at times, right? Like him, John Tanji were two of the guys that this year, if you'd watched them in previous years, you wouldn't recognize them, right? And with him, this is a nice bet on upside. You can't teach size. He is a functionally good athlete. But overall, I think I have to hold on. Did I grade this for the Hornets? Yeah, I'll give this a C for the Hornets. I think there were better options on the board. And Yannick Niederhauser, I'll give this a B. So not a lot of devastating like F. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do like F, because fuck, like I didn't interview these players. I'm going to give these NBA GMs for the most part. Did I give an F? I think I gave an F to the Pelicans for the Derek Queen pick. But yeah, it's nothing too outrageous. Now, overall, winners, losers, obviously, biggest winner of the draft, the Spurs. Easily, 1,000%, the Spurs won the shit out of this draft. Pairing Dylan Harper with Carter Bryant as the 2 and 14, they're both guys who can actually play for you relatively soon. They're not players who are necessarily going to be taking like 4 years of development reps in order to be productive. And they're both young. They're both freshmen who can play for you. Freshmen who can play are rare, really rare. Colin Murray Boyles probably could have played last year, so he would have been a freshman who could play. Stephon Castle could play. What's the differentiating factor here? High intelligence and defense. That's what gets you on the court at the NBA level. A jumper would be nice. Some rebounding would be great. But overall, these are the two things to me that get you on the court as a rookie, and these guys have it. So the Spurs win the draft for me. I think if I think of a second winner, the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks getting that Pelicans pick is highway robbery. It's a good one. Did I talk about Jace Richardson to the Orlando Magic? That's an A+ for me too. I apologize. I glossed over that. I'm sorry. This is an A plus for me. I really like Jace a lot. I think I would have gone if they had kept 16. I think he was like my pick for them at 16. I would have liked him. I mean, I would have debated it for sure, but I could see. I think he's a top 20 player in this draft. There's no way. I don't. If you look at my board, I've added like a bust potential for all of these, categories. If you look, like the bust potential is the far right. My bust potential on Jace Richardson is 5%. He's not going to bust. He's either going to be a deep rotation player or he's going to be a fourth starter, fifth starter if things go well for him. He's not probably going to be a superstar or a star, but he is going to be like a really freaking good player. I have a very high grade on him for a guy who fell 19th to my board. I am very high on him. And part of that is because of his intelligence, his feel for the game. Maybe because I liked his dad a little bit. Maybe there's a little bit of bias there. I like Jason Richardson a lot. But also the numbers, man. The analytics are off the charts for this guy. And at some point, when the analytics match the eye test, you just have to trust it. I think that they deserve an A plus for this. I think he's the best player left on the board. Apart from Maxime Renault from my board, I think he was a really good one. Okay. So he's like Cameron Payne. No, I don't think so. Would you pick Rocco at 39 if he is the best player available? Let's take a look at the best players available according to the board, and we'll just prime you guys real quick because in an hour and a half, we're going to be doing our second round live stream, and I don't want to be doing live streams back to back to back. So it's kind of exhausted from what happened on the panel today, y'all. So I'm not trying to be in a bad mood at 7 o'clock. Okay. So best players available. Maxime Renault, still available. Rasheer Fleming, still available. Noah Penda, still available. Adu Thiero, still available. Ryan Cockbrenner, still available. Markovic, Bogu Markovic, still available. Sion James, still available. Janai Broom, still available. Kobe Sanders, Rocco Zakarski, Jameer Watkins, Chaz Lanier, Cam Jones. All of these guys are still available. Tyrese Proctor, Amari Williams, Kobe Brea, Alex Tui. Okay, these are a lot of guys. And I'm going to tell you who I really don't want the Raptors to pick. Okay, so I have a weird feeling they're going to pick number 61 on my board, which is not, sorry. I have a feeling they're going to pick John Tonji. Now, I'm dubious about this, and it might be a bust of a pick, but it's a worthwhile shot, and it will depend a lot on intel. I need to know what happened with this guy last year. I need to know why he was so good last year and why he was so bad in years prior. I want to actually show you what I mean by that. And just because I'm getting this strange feeling that it's going to be, it might be him. And here, one sec. Stats. I want you to look at John Tonji's stats because they are some of the weirdest shit you've ever seen. And I need to understand what changed in his game. So 6 year, okay, 6 years of collegiate basketball. We're talking about, damn, okay? We're talking about real late bloomer shit here, okay? Now, I need to understand what the fuck happened in this guy's game. Because look at the per 100 possessions here. He went from a guy who didn't start, a guy who started one game in his first 2 years. If you isolate those two years, like you were legitimately talking about less than 20 points per 100 possessions. And we got up to this year 36.6 points per 100 possessions, right? You were talking about a guy who has doubled his free throw attempt rate from any prior year. His best year prior to this was 7.6, but now 13 free throw attempts per 100. And he's not because he went to a lesser conference. He went to a better conference. Now, when you think about it, last year at the SEC, was it just a matter of he missed time because of the injury or whatever, that he didn't play for Missouri enough? And now when he transfers to Wisconsin, he finally gets to show whatever the hell he worked on when he was out, and his game is just fundamentally changed. Is this the ultimate sleeper among sleepers when you actually think about it? 36.6 points per 100 possessions is an insane mark. 38.8% from three on 11 attempts per 100 possessions is an insane mark. These are nutty numbers. Look at the advanced stats. Again, at no year prior to, Was he overwhelmingly positive in terms of the advanced stats? This was not a guy that you were thinking NBA. This is a guy you were thinking Maccabi Tel Aviv. This is a guy that you were thinking Benetton Treviso, Partizan Belgrade. Like you were thinking Europe 100% with this guy. Where the fuck did this come from? 11.1, 11.0 box plus minus in the Big Ten? What? This guy became one of the best players in Big Ten basketball, and I have no idea what happened with him the last 2 years. This is what needs to be investigated before you actually take this guy 39th because he can shoot. He can shoot on high volume. And this could be another Jameson battle situation. It totally matches up with the Jameson battle profile, even though Jameson had better priors. I think this is a guy that maybe if he goes undrafted, the Raptors would be the first call. If he's there at 39, he's legitimately your best pick. I think you could probably take him. Sonny K saying, I want Tanji personally. I think he's ready to contribute right away. He comes from a good stock too, family wise. Interesting. Capital Gain said, usage rate from 20% to 28% explains that. Next question. I don't think a usage rate jump from 20 to 28% means that your free throw attempt will double. Like, that's not normal at all. Okay. You're also talking about a guy who took 11 threes this past year versus 4.5 threes per 100 possessions the year before. Shooting 39%. And I mean, again, if you look at his entire collegiate career, it's not like he's a bad shooter. He's a 37.8% 3-point shooter. He has a lot of good work as a shooter. Like he played 261 minutes in his freshman season and shot 43% on high volume. But high volume, limited results, limited minutes. I think his game is rounded out a lot. I think when players show you a consistent ability to get better, but his track record of getting better was not linear, right? But when you actually consider, forget the stats for a second. I want you to actually contextualize the conference that he was playing in. When you go from the Mountain West, when you go from the MWC to the SEC to the Big Ten, that is a jump big time in competition level. Colorado State to like Wisconsin in terms of the schedule they play is a mammoth jump. I'll remind you, Jonathan Mobo was probably the best player last year in the Mountain West, probably. So this could be a diamond in the rough. Another player, maybe more of a 5-year senior type, is Jameer Watkins, who played last 2 years at Florida State. The Raptors have shown a willingness to take these types of guys and stock them up on two ways and take a gamble. Last year, Jameson Battle, Jonathan Mobo, Jamal Shed. So you got your 21-year-old. Now, it's also possible that you can go super young with this pick, like you did with Ulrich. The Raptors are not locked into a type, right? Dougie Hamilton saying, bro, look at his free throw percentage. That's nuts. I agree. Going from 67.7% as a freshman to 85.7 to 82 to 81 to 100% to 90.9% is incredible. You are 91% free throw shooter in 37 games. You are an absolutely insane shooter. So yeah, I certainly understand the John Tonji part. I don't know about him as a defender. I'm going to watch a lot of John Tonji tape, a lot more John Tonji tape if we do pick him just before I do the weekend film analysis. But he's very interesting. He is a very interesting player and sort of fits, the physicality mold that the Raptors are going for. Like, it's interesting. Like him and Colin Murray Boyles, if you saw them at a Walmart, you actually would probably think they were football players as opposed to basketball players. They're built like that. They're both built like that. They're very stocky, very big. They're not the long, lanky, Noah Senge, Pascal Siakam build, right? They're stocky. They're low center of gravity guys. And I think that might be a really good thing. Dougie Hamilton, Penn, you get me way too high on people because I think I view the game very similarly to you. Yeah, I'm not actually running any sort of brigade for the 61st player on my board. I'm just saying if you investigate why his situation in Colorado State did not result or what changes he made. Because again, man, sometimes it's just about getting with a new trainer. I'm telling you, Jameson Battle was like this too. Jameson Battle was not the greatest shooter. Like, I'm pretty sure that Jameson Battle did not shoot 38% throughout his collegiate career. He became better. And I do think from what I dug into Jameson, there was a shift in his focus and perspective and his training style and everything. and it just clicked. Everything clicked. Again, people do not grow in a linear way. Guys don't necessarily go like Rasheer Fleming, right? Like it's like 33%, 36%, 38%. Like you love that because that sort of soothes your mind and thinking, oh, well, next number is 42%. And it's like it doesn't always work that way, right? And we have a tendency to absorb the idea of an outlier as a fluke. Outliers, not necessarily flukes, right? So when a guy goes from, I don't know, 3 boxes minus to 11, it could be something as simple as he got in better shape, or he cut out sugar, or he got better sleep, or he hated his coach. I need to know why, though. Raps just dropped an open gym moment of CMB in which he says how much he would love to be here. Yes, the damage control is absolutely insane. I wanted to tackle that as well before I get out of here and before I refresh for our live tonight. Looking forward to it, by the way. Really, really cool. Breaking down the second round, be a bit more rapid fire. I will let y'all know that while it will be a call in show, it will not be what we did yesterday. No it'll be more like Ersin and myself just breaking down the draft. If there will be callers, we will take them right after the draft to talk about the draft. I think because yesterday we had 5, 6, 7 people up here, we ended up getting into a conversation, and I don't think like we were as focused. And I do want to be respectful to the viewers. Okay, two final thoughts. Respect to viewers. One, respect to viewers. Two, Colin Murray Boyle situation. I do think the Chloe Kitts situation here, like I think this girl, I don't want to call her this girl because she's a very, very, very good basketball player. His girlfriend is a huge consideration for him. This is something that I sort of gleaned or picked up on last year that he's just very smitten with this girl. And maybe this was an immediate thought of shoot, Toronto's really far away from South Carolina, certainly a lot further than Atlanta, Orlando, San Antonio, Oklahoma City. There's a lot of places where he potentially could have gone where they would have been a lot closer. And so if that's the consideration, maybe that. I also have to think of it from the perspective of he's 20, 21 years old. Bro, I'll tell you a story. When I was 20, I consider myself a remarkably mature person when I was 20 years old, okay? When I was 20, I thought I was really smart. I had my money taken care of. I had already bought my first place. I was on the verge of buying my second place. I was a hard worker. I was a good student. I was a student at U of T. I'm not someone that you would have looked at and said, that's a kid who doesn't know what they're doing. I had good habits. I went to the gym. But that all being said, I was absolutely smitten with this girl. And I found out that my grandmother was sick, and I didn't take it too seriously. To be honest, I didn't take it too seriously. And she was in Italy at the time. And at the moment that my grandmother got sick, my girlfriend and I broke up. It was devastating, heartbreaking, tough. And I really did not take it well. I was very emotionally distraught over this. And in the coming weeks, as we tried to patch things up, my grandmother's situation got worse and worse. And all I kept thinking about was Christmas. I need to get through Christmas with my girlfriend because that would be a very, good bonding moment for us. We just broke up. I don't want to leave. And then we break up again and whatever. And Christmas comes, and very shortly after my grandmother passed away, I made it to Italy for her funeral, but I was not actually able to be there for her before. Now, my cousin Abby had a really smart thing to say about this, trying to make me feel better because when I got there, everyone was just like, why didn't he come? Why didn't he come? Why didn't he come? But the truth is, in that moment, as a 20, 21-year-old kid, all I could think about was my girlfriend, my girlfriend, my girlfriend. I think I was 20, 19. I don't know. I definitely wasn't 21. I think I was 19 or 20. I might have been 19. My point is, in that moment, you really it might be your first love. You just might be thinking you're getting married to this girl. You might be thinking if I leave, she might leave me. I might become to whatever. So I'm gonna tell you, like, uh, Catherine said it, prefrontal cortex development 25, right? And all of that has to do with emotional regulation and stuff like that. I don't think I've researched anything about Colin Murray Boyles to suggest he's immature or impulsive or anything like that. But I think in that moment, he might have just thought to himself, I'm going to be really, really far away from this girl that I love. And I wasn't expecting to be this far away. Toronto is very, very far away from South Carolina. If you think about it, it's further than Chicago, it's further than Minnesota. There's a border across, it's just further. And if he was from New York or Minnesota or whatever, if it was Jalen Suggs, oh, wait, Jalen Suggs not with Paige Beckers. My point is, if it was someone from Minnesota, if his girlfriend was from New York or Brooklyn or New Jersey or something, it might be a little bit closer, but South Carolina to Toronto is far. Good for him, though. He's going to have another Carolina kid here in Brandon Ingram, Carolina guy, to make him feel a lot better. I think once he lands and he's here and he gets to explore the city, he and Chloe Kitts are going to find that this is a beautiful place for them. I don't think any of the social media outrage was necessary, but I also don't think the outrage against the outrage is necessary either. I don't think people are wrong to interpret his behavior as he was a little bit disappointed in that moment. But I also think that it's wrong to hold someone's first reaction as their primary feelings about a situation. Again, you're 20, 21 years old. The first thought is, this is surprising. Now, he did say, what the fuck? And he looked down, and there's some mention of Chloe Kitts saying it's going to be okay. That's kind of the thing, right? Nobody looked that enthused. She didn't look that enthused. So a lot of people are sort of frying him, and I see the Raptors doing their PR bullshit. Like, I'm quite familiar with Raptors PR, by the way. So I see what they're doing. They're trying to do damage control. They're trying to make sure this kid doesn't have an uphill battle with Toronto fans and Toronto media, because we know, man, they hold this shit against you forever. There's still some person in Vancouver right now still holding Steve Francis's reaction against him. So what I'll say is, I'm running a poll right now. Hang on. One sec. Let me pull this up. Man, give me one sec here. That's my poll. Best city to live in if you were an NBA player, and go. Toronto, Denver, Indiana, Sacramento. Honestly, no idea how Sacramento has 11%, but Indiana is failing miserably. Toronto, 77%. Honestly, man, I understand y'all probably will say, but this is biased sampling because you're a Toronto channel and a lot of people from Toronto are going to root for this. I get that. And maybe I picked Sacramento, Indiana, and Denver to cook Ron, Swipa, and Ox in the same poll. But this was my point. I don't want to listen to any of this nonsense about American athletes don't want to come to Toronto. Like this bullshit right here. Where is this? Where is this? Where is this? Yeah, this. Ox, sorry, Swiper seeing it. I keep seeing athletes have negative responses towards Toronto, towards the Raptors for some reason. And it's like, bro, do you remember Scotty Barnes' reaction? Like, come on, man. So, yes. Also, big shout out to my guy Derek Parker. He had this to say about the Spurs.
You should be terrified that the San Antonio Spurs drafted Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant. I'll say it again, even closer to the camera. You should be terrified that the San Antonio Spurs drafted Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant. A plus.
I'll say this. In this pre-draft cycle, the Heat Check series is fire. Derek is one of the best at this. He covers the OKC Thunder. Had some conversations with him. I'm gonna try to see if I can get him on the show at some point. He's a really, really well-researched guy. My final point, which was my 18th final point, but I do want to get this off my chest because I was kind of venting it out loud, and I've talked many times about how sometimes saying things out loud helps you get over them. Okay. Important thing. I hate lazy people. I try not to hate anybody, but lazy people who don't know they're lazy really piss me off. I didn't like it when I was a kid, when I would work super hard on a project and the group partner that I was assigned to didn't work hard on that project. I was the try hard. I was the person who showed up to practice on time. I was the person who stayed late. I was the person who put the time in the gym. So if you are going to tell me that you deserve my spot, you're going to have to outwork me. I value hard work a lot. I have that bias, maybe. And this is why I don't really beef with Jordan or Mars. They do a lot of work. They prepare for the panel. I don't know if y'all know this, but sometimes I won't have watched the game that I know is going to be covered on the panel. So I wake up at 7 o'clock and I'll watch the game. I'll watch the game with my morning coffee and my notepad out because I don't want to waste people's time by talking shit about a game that I just watched the highlights for. What that is respect on two levels. Number one, it is respect for yourself, that you have enough respect for yourself that you will be prepared for a situation in which you were being paid to talk about basketball, which, let's be honest, is a dream for a lot of people and a dream come true for me. Having PENSARE Basketball and Player's Choice is a gift in a lot of ways, and you don't want to spit on that gift by being lazy, showing up late, and unprepared. The second thing is it's respect for the audience, knowing that your audience is tuning in to understand what you felt about a certain situation, maybe just to hang out with you for 20 minutes, 30 minutes to make their workday a little less lonely. Whatever reason that people come check out basketball videos, is very, very important to me that you walk away thinking about something a little bit differently than you came in thinking about it. And I can't really do that if I don't know what I'm talking about. So it is also respect to the audience. What triggered me and kind of pissed me off today about that situation was I was just wanted to talk about Neek Clifford. I think Neek is a phenomenal success story the past 5 years, and he's put in a lot of work. And to have somebody just basically say he's not relevant, he's not important, while I understand the sentiment that a rookie is not going to come in and make or break your championship odds, I think that it is disingenuous. I think it's just wrong. I think it's wrong. I don't know if we would have 500 people in here if I simply said, well, Colin Murray Boyle's not going to win MVP next year. He's not going to make the Raptors championship, so it doesn't really matter. Let's not dissect it. I do believe that I like process-based people. I like people who are open to learning. That's also why I don't have any issues with Chill. Do I agree with Chill? No, I don't agree with Chill, and I certainly don't have a problem with Ox. Saying Chris Webber is better than Jokic. I don't care. I think that, man. There's probably some people in Sacramento that think that. It doesn't matter to me what you think. There is a sort of misinformation that I simply don't like somebody who doesn't agree with me. Mars doesn't agree with me a lot. Mars and I clashed on millions of things over the last year and a half. There's always respect. Jordan and I disagree on Scotty Barnes. We disagree on Jamal Shed. We disagree on Jacoby Walter. We disagree on everything. We definitely disagree on Dennis Schroeder versus Derek White. Chill and I disagree on Scotty Barnes. He's told me as much many times. He's told me, he's like, when y'all win, he's not going to be best player. Jordan's told me that. There's no disrespect. There's no need for disrespect because there's a disagreement. What there's need, and I don't think there's a need for disrespect, but there ends up being disrespect when a person is not willing to listen to you. One, when they're not willing to hear you out. When two, when you kind of feel like you're beating your head against the wall, right? There's certain conversations that I like to see myself out of where I'll ask a person before we even start the debate, or when the debate is getting a little bit heated, I'm like, what would I need to tell you or convince you? What data could I give you that might change your mind? And be like, nothing can change my mind. Cool. Well, that is that, right? Legend of Oxperiment. Ben, how do you feel about Swiper saying Cade Cunningham is better than Scotty? Well, here's the thing. This past year, Cade was better than Scotty. I can't argue that. Can't argue that at all. That's fair. He made an all NBA team. Scotty hasn't made an all NBA team. He took his team to the playoffs. Scotty did not take his team to the playoffs. Would I trade Scotty Barnes for Cade Cunningham? No. Not at all. I still value what Scotty does more. I still believe long-term Scotty will be the better player. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. I'm totally okay with that. So that's kind of my point. Look, there needs to be some sort of fundamental respect. And I think too many people, maybe on the internet, and maybe some of you as well, start getting caught up in heroes and villains, right? If I'm your hero, then Swiper is your villain. And if Swiper is your hero, then I'm a villain. It doesn't need to be this way. It certainly doesn't need to be this way. It is a very unevolved way to think about things. Just like, when you broke up with somebody, you started thinking, who was the asshole? Who was the bitch? Who was the fucker? Who's going to regret this? Maybe you're not a good fit. It's a really healthy approach to look at life. You're not a good fit. When you get fired from a job, are they the assholes, or were you the asshole who showed up late? Or are they the assholes that, screwed up your pay 3 times, or overworked you? Or are you the one who took long breaks? You know what I mean? We're always looking for a scapegoat. There doesn't always need to be a scapegoat. I think my life became a lot more peaceful when I realized that disagreements are not a result of me being bad or the other person being bad. That's a very simplistic way to look at the conflict that arises in people. I think conflicts arise because people are incompatible, because their communication styles are incompatible. When one person speaks and the other person can't listen, nothing can be done. There's a lot of communication that happens not only on the panel, but everywhere on the internet, all discourse, where people are simply listening so that they can speak. They're not actually listening. They're not hearing anything. They're actually just waiting for their turn to speak. And so they hone in on the smallest thing that the other person says, because the entire time the other person's speaking, they're looking down and they're not even thinking about what the other person's saying. They hear the slightest small thing and then they jump, because now it's my opportunity to speak. And, you know, it helps to have people who can sit back a little bit, like chill sometimes and just observe. It really helps. That's good balance. If you want great balance in a 5, 6 person panel, you can't have 6 yappers. That's not how it works. You need to have some sort of balance, someone who's willing to listen, someone who asks the good questions, someone who can be a little long winded, someone who can be a little short. Diversity is good. Diversity is really good. You've probably heard the slogan, diversity is great for us or whatever, but have you ever really thought about what diversity really means? Diversity is not black and white, gay, straight. That's not real diversity. I mean, that's part of diversity, but that's not everything. It's people who think differently coming together to make something different. And to that, I'll say, there's one of my mentors wrote a book on corporate governance, and I've mentioned this before, and someone spotted who it was. That was very random. I was like, wow, what an academic bookish crowd we have. But yeah, he wrote a book on corporate governance, and basically stated that the diversity of a board of directors, on the barriers of age, gender, socioeconomic brackets, whatever. You got to talk to different people. You got to bring different people together, and the best organizations understand this. So I'm really hoping that my appearances on PC are not going to continue to be so polarizing for people. I'm not trying to be polarizing. I'm just being myself. I'm always going to be myself. And I sometimes look at it as a fork in the road, where there are certain times where you may not think that I'm self-aware to know what I'm doing. I absolutely know what I'm doing. I'm making a conscious choice to speak my mind, because the day I don't speak my mind and I start lying, or I start deflecting, or I start hiding, my thoughts and my emotions, like I I don't even care if I lose subscribers. I don't care if I lose the panel or player's choice or the paycheck or whatever, the opportunity, the exposure. Any one of these things, losing any one of those things is preferable to losing yourself. Any one of those things is preferable to losing yourself. I'd rather lose $1 million than lose myself. And I think that hopefully can make you incorruptible in life, but it can also make your life very uncomplicated. I don't need to negotiate with myself on how much money I'm willing to take from a betting sponsor. I will take millions of dollars and piss it down the toilet from a betting sponsor. I'll never be sponsored by betting. This is a hard and fast rule for me. Some people will call that crazy. It's not crazy. I am not going to kiss a prospect's ass. If the Raptors had picked Kasparis Yakushonis, I would have lost 100 subscribers based on how much shit I talked about that pick right away. Does it mean I'm right or wrong? No, it just means in that moment, that's how I feel. And that's got to be the way it's got to be, man. Because what point is there to be like, that like old cliche, be yourself, everybody else is taken? Yeah, it's a good thing to remember. I'll see y'all in an hour. Can't wait. I'm actually looking forward to today's draft more than yesterday's. You know why? Because there's no anxiety today. No, I'm lying. There you go. I still got the anxiety thing, man. There's still a little bit of anxiety here, but you got CMB. I'm just praying at this point, 39, somebody really good drops, but I trust that the Raptors did their work. The Raptors are really good sleuths. Like, they tend to identify value late. I know that they didn't really with David Johnson, and they've messed up. In terms of targets that I really like for the Raptors, I'll give you guys just a quick primer before we do this live. But in terms of guys that I really like for the Raptors, I would be a little upset with Ryan Nemhard. I'm not going to lie. I don't think it's the most viable, long-term fit. But Alex Tui, Kobe Brea, Amari Williams, Tyrese Proctor are all solid picks here, I think. Max Shulga, I'd be disappointed. Javon Small, I would understand as Dink Pate as a very big flyer on upside would be interesting, because he's still not yet to turn 20. John Tonji would be interesting, provided you cross off your T's and dot your I's on why he became the way he became. Cam Jones, good pick. Jameer Watkins would be very interesting. Hanson Yang off the board. Janai Broom would be puzzling as hell. Good player, really good player, one of the best players in college basketball, but very puzzling for me. Sion James, I've gotten a lot higher on him and would sort of fit the Colin Murray Boyles, defensive menace type. And if the Raptors really were watching Lou Dort and those guys and the multi-positional defenders, like, maybe they would prefer a guy like Sion James, but I'm just curious how many of these guys you can put on the same team. in terms of Bogu Markovic, that would be a player you don't have on this team, and that would be back-to-back picks addressing that number 4 spot. I would love if we end up getting Ryan Kalkbrenner in this situation. Rasheer Fleming would be great. Adu Thero would be a dream come true. Y'all know that I was pushing for Jonathan Kuminga for RJ Barrett, that kind of trade. I think Adu Thero gives you a lot of what Jonathan Kuminga does, and I love the kid, man. I loved his interviews. I've been higher on him all year than the consensus, and the fact that he's there, that's a really good pick for the Raptors if they get him. And obviously, if we're talking about Darko guys, Maxime Renault would be phenomenal. So that is where we're at. We'll see how it breaks. We'll see how the board breaks. But with a full day to scout, to change the board, to adjust, to do additional, research on why did this guy fall? Why did Rasheer fall? Rasheer's the type of guy that might have fallen to like 32, 33, 34 because none of the teams would have expected him to be there. But believe it or not, there were so many mocks that had this guy 27 to 29 that I'm actually not that surprised that he fell. But falling to the second round is tough, man, is very tough. So let's hope the Raptors cook up. There's a lot of good players on the board, but if they pick Don Tanji, one of the older players in this draft, a 6-year senior, undersized a little bit for, a wing, little stocky, not the super athlete, they better be betting that he becomes like Desmond Bain, but that's crazy. Okay, I got y'all. Talk to y'all later. Enjoy, and I'll see you guys at 7:15ish.